Thank you for being there today. If you have your Bibles, please turn with me to Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. I've been waiting a long time to do this, and I'm going to thank First Baptist Newcastle for giving me this opportunity. Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. It says, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there. Verse 24. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Verse 25. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost." They cried out for fear, but immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer. It is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." So he said, "Come." When Peter had came down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind was boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink. He cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." Verse 31. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity. I pray right now that you would just remove me and let the people see you, dear Lord. Dear Lord, just let your words be spoken here today. Dear Lord, I just pray that in everything we do, we will keep our eyes on you and trust you for everything. Your wonderful name. Amen. This message is one of my oldies but goodies. I've had it for quite a while, but we need to get out of the boat. And later I'm going to show you how we get out of the boat. You know, too many times we get in a church and inside these four walls we are safe. And sometimes for us to get out, it takes faith, takes courage, and everything we do takes everything we got to get out. But I want this congregation to remember that God is the head of the church and not men. My first point is the facts. Look with me at verse 22 again. It says, immediately Jesus made the disciples to get into the boat and go ahead of him get into the boat and go to the other side. While he dismissed the crowd. Sorry, my glasses are putting tricks on me. But Jesus was, at this time, didn't want to be made king. The people was trying to make him a king. That's in John chapter 6, verses 14 and 15. This is why he sent the crowd away, to be there alone with God. But the people wanted him to make him king, but Jesus didn't want that. He pointed to the Heavenly Father. Verse 23 says, and while he sent the multitudes away, he went up into the mountain apart to pray. And when evening came, he was there alone. This shows me two things. Jesus had to give way for a while. Jesus was both God and man. Sometimes we forget that, but sometimes we have to give way. And we give way maybe into our rooms or to a secure place and to be with God, to spend time with God. How long has it been since you just got in your room by yourself and just spent time with God? I mean, some people do it every day. Some people don't do it every day. But to get alone and get with God is probably time well spent. And I guarantee you, if you do it early in the morning, late at night. Because I guarantee you, if you do it in the middle of the day, that doorbell or that telephone, something's going to mess you up. But early in the morning, nobody's up, so maybe the dog. But nobody's up, and you can spend time there alone with God. I mean, it's time well spent. But notice in verse 24, it says, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, and the wind was contrary. The disciples was with him, like they were always. But he sent them on their way. So he said, guys, get in the boat and I'll come to you later. And by this time, the boat was 4 or 5 miles out. I mean, they wasn't just offshore. I mean, they was quite ways out there. And it says in verse 25, it says, in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. Fourth watch. I want you to see this in verse 25. The fourth watch is about between 3 and 6 a.m. Now, I get up at 5 and my wife gets up at 4:30 or something. So, but to me, that's early morning. But the Bible called it middle of the night. So, between 3 and 6 a.m., that's what time this was. It says in verse 26, it says, and when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a spirit. And they cried for fear. Fear here means terror. They were terribly afraid. Now, this kind of strikes me, not in a funny way, but in a weird way. These disciples, most of them were fishermen, but some of them weren't. But they were afraid, and they didn't know what was going on. But verse 27 says, "But straightway Jesus spoke unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid." There's two things I want you to notice. The boat was going back and forth because of the storm. Jesus was going to be with his disciples. You know, we may have to go a little ways to meet Jesus, but he's always there. I mean, if we have him in our hearts, I got this saying, he's one prayer away. That's how far he is. One prayer away, and he's there with you. And but Jesus was walking on the water to go see his disciples. The same Jesus that walked on the water takes care of us today. The same exact one. Now, my second point is the doubt of Peter. Let's look at verse 28. It says, "And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto the water." Peter was always the one that spoke up. You know, I can't identify with Peter. Too many times I'd stick my foot in my mouth. I'd say something I shouldn't say, or blur out something that I wish I could take back some of the time. But Peter just didn't have no filter. He said, Lord, if it's you, let me come out. Let me come out there and see you. So in verse 29 it says, "And we said, Come. When Peter came down out of the ship, he was walking on water to go meet Jesus." Now, Jesus said, "Come," and Peter stepped out to go meet him. And too many times I'm afraid we got churches that will come to church and they will work for God and they'll do all this, but they won't step out to go see their neighbor. Or maybe God's calling you to step out and go talk to that neighbor about Jesus Christ. Or maybe he's calling you to teach a Sunday school class or to volunteer for something. And too many times we want to hold on to that security blanket. You say, well, we're safe right here. We don't want to go. We're safe right here. But then the third point, faith of fear, says, "But when they saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, Lord, save me." Peter took his eyes off Jesus. Walking on that water, he went to meet him. And I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine when he got out of that boat, he had his eyes squarely on Jesus. But then he began to look around. And he began to think about where he was. You know, too many times we look around and we get our eyes off Jesus. And too many times we sink. We go down. And too many times we fail. But how far are we willing to go meet Jesus? Are you willing to get out of that boat, get out of your comfort zone, whatever it may be, and go do something? You know, for a long time, I thought my mission was a church, and it still is, don't get me wrong. But for a long time, I tried to explain the Great Commission away, you know. I thought, I don't want to go to a foreign country. I don't want to do that, Lord. I want to serve you in a local church. And about 2-3 months ago, you know, Jeremy's always telling us, tell me what Jesus is doing right now in your life. Well, I'm going on a mission trip. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know what for. Jesus wants me to go. And I'm scared to death. I don't mind telling you, but I'm scared to death. But Dustin, she would talk to me and get me lined out. So I'm trusting Jesus to step out of my comfort zone. I've never been out of the state, not much less out of the country. And I'm a big old chicken. I'll just tell you that right now. I'm a big chicken. But if Jesus wants me to go, you know, he's on my side. So someday I'm going to go on a mission, but I don't know when. But it's coming. So I'm just preparing myself now. But my third point is faith for fear. It says, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink. Lord, save me. Peter took his eyes off Jesus. And verse 31 says, immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You had little faith. He said, why did you doubt? And when they, notice verse 32, says, and when they came into the ship, the wind ceased. The wind lay down. But in verse 31, Jesus is always there to take your hand and pull you back up. He will do that even today. And, you know, Jeremy talks a lot about being a witness and going out and he said, so what if you're killed? Look where you wake up. You'll wake up in heaven. What do we have to fear from that? It says in verse 33, says, then they were in the ship and came and worshipped him, saying, of a truth, thou art the Son of God. They came, they got back into the ship, the wind died down, and everything was all right. And they came and worshiped God. You know, some of us or all of us need to come to a place where we can worship God either corporately, like together in a church, or by ourselves. There was 12 guys that night. And when Peter stepped out on the water, where was the other 11? They were back in the ship. Did they not have the faith that Peter did? You know, the other disciples probably saying, oh, there goes Peter again. His big mouth got him in trouble. But Peter got out of the boat. The other 11 didn't. And I think with the church today, that's one of the problems. None of us wants to get out of the boat. We might look over on the side, say, yeah, I could do that, or I could do that, but nobody gets out. And during this year, it's an important year in our nation. More than ever, we need to get out of the boat, because Jesus is coming back soon. Maybe quicker than we all think, but he'll come back. Are you willing to get out of that boat? Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this day, and thank you for this sermon. I just thank you for these people who are here. Dear Lord, just give us the courage to get out of the boat and to worship you when you're in the boat. But dear Lord, let us get out and trust you in faith in everything we do. And may we just get out and worship you and be a witness for you. Dear Lord, we love you. Thank you for a wonderful day. In a wonderful name. Amen.